Today I wanted to talk about Cypress essential oil as an agent for energy field healing, for energy field clearing. And to do that, I wanted to look at some of the old ancient wisdom around the tree. So the essential oil that we use in Western aromatherapy is Cypress sempervirens. And sempervirens means always living, and that's because I guess that it is evergreen. So this is a different cypress. Actually, this is the cypress that grows as a hedge around our garden, which drives my husband mad because it grows so quickly. But I think one of the things that's really interesting about it is how you can't cut into it. So first of all, we'll talk about that in a minute, but first of all, just to notice that it doesn't really have leaves as such. These are called scale leaves, and these are great, of course, for decorating the house at Christmas because they're wide and they spread nicely and you can put things between them. But also, of course, the fragrance is incredible. It's really clearing, it's very sharp, and you might wonder though, is it a bit odd to bring this into your house at celebration times when actually traditionally it's a plant concerned with death? With cemeteries, it's normally planted in cemeteries, and yeah, it's quite dismal when you think about that. But actually, I propose that the reason for that is because how it clears the energy field. So traditionally, when we're thinking about these kind of plants, we'll be thinking about how they're seen in Greek mythology. That's very kind of classical studies, Eurocentric, a bit racist point of view, but it can be helpful to understand the symbology. And there is a famous myth about how the cypress tree is actually a friend of Apollo's, Cypress, who had got killed in a shooting, and he was made into the cypress tree. But more interesting is how you will often see cypress trees turning up with associations to death. So for example, the Romans would carry this on funeral processions, and a bit like we in the Victorian times would have had mourning brooches, they would carry cypress with them as a sign that says somebody near me's died. So I want you to really think about that for a minute, because what does that mean? Does that mean don't come near me, I've been close to the plague or smallpox or something like that? Or does that mean they may be lingering by me? You know, the souls that don't want to move on, be careful. You know, there might be something close that you can't see. Or does it mean just be careful how you approach me, I'm delicate? You know, whatever you say might upset me. I don't really want to speak to people anymore. I don't know. But what is interesting is perhaps the Romans understood this as a whole language, a bit like we understand you give somebody a red rose, it means, oh, there's intentions, you know. This means death is close to me. And they would also bury their corpses on beds of cypress. So as I say, it splays very easily. I don't know if I've got, oh, I have got two, so you can see how they can overlay. You would be able to make really quite a beautiful mattress for a corpse to lay on, and the idea that this would accompany you on the journey to the afterlife, the afterworld. What I find when I'm using the essential oil is it's very good at being able to clear all the stuff that's lurking around me. So for a long time, actually, I used to work in an office which just didn't have enough space, and oh, health and safety would have a field day now, but importantly, it had fluorescent lights and they really disturbed my auric field. And so also if we went into an electric shop where the tellies, and you remember in the 80s they'd have the boom boxes, the Rasta blasters, what have you, and I loved those kind of gadgets. I loved a stereo system, but go into a room, a shop with them, and all of the static would really go zzz, and I'd be like, oh, I can't even think straight, it seems too loud for me. And Cypress is really good for being able to clear all that off. The idea that there's residual stuff, negative energies, and it will settle it out. So that would be the most common version of the myth that we talk about. I found it quite interesting that there are also cypresses in the Forbidden City in Beijing. Now, they are different to these Cupressii. These are Leylandii, the ones that we have, the essential oils of sempervirens. I can't remember the Latin name, but they do come from the big cypress genus, and they are ancient. Most of them are at least 500 years old. There's some that are 900 years old, and there's quite a famous sort of Zen parable about the cypress tree. And it's said that a young student had said to his teacher, what does the meaning of Bodhidharma mean to us? And he was talking about the coming of the master who had invented Zen Buddhism. And his teacher had said, it's like the cypress in the courtyard. So this is like one of these strange parables that's made to make you think, really, and to say it's not really, the answer's not obvious. You have to really kind of go and look at the cypress and go, wait, what? This great teacher's in there. Where's this great teacher? Is it maybe in these beautiful spreading leaves? Is it in the fragrance? Maybe it's the fact that it's sticky all over my hands because it knows how to heal itself. Well, all of those things are true, because the teaching means that enlightenment is not outside of you, it's inherent in everything. And that they also say that the cypress tree and the sky are not separate, they are one. So the idea that life and divinity flows through all things continuously. So that's a very different way of seeing the imagination of what the ancient Greeks were saying, that this would take you through to the afterlife, that it would protect you, that it was a pure, like, keep negative fields from you. And of course people put them into the house because they're protected against dark spirits. There's always this idea of purity, but also that beauty is immortal. Enlightenment is everywhere, all of the time. Personally, I find it hard to be able to see any of those things when my energy fields are busy and disturbed. And so being able to shift those out is helpful. There's also another myth that people don't really talk about very much, which comes from Zoroastrianism, which is Persia, what is Iran now. And it was said that the prophet Zoroastrian planted the Persian cypress tree at the place where he always established fire temples. So fire temples still exist in Iran, but also in India. And these are very sacred spaces where it's all about purity of energy. Even the priests who put the wood, the fragrant woods, onto the eternal flame have to wear a mask so they don't pollute it. And around those are the cypress trees, because it's a pure space. It kind of keeps the boundaries of the pure space. And going back to what I said right at the beginning about the cypresses we have in our gardens, Cupressus leylandii, these are very, very green, you may have noticed. That is because we have to let it grow quite a lot through the year, because if you cut it right back to off the green, it just dies. So the tree is dead from this point onwards, but it keeps living after the dead bit. So you can see how that is an association as well. But also, I did a meditation with Cypress yesterday to really try and help me to go into the depth of, well, what is it teaching? And the dream I had, I can't be explicit about because it was really personal, but it was about boundaries. It was about overstepping somebody's boundary, which might even be something that you'd think, why is that a boundary? That's really silly. But how it will ruin a relationship, because that personal boundary is obviously sacred to that person, and that you've completely violated it. When I was thinking about it, I was thinking that is not an aspect that I would have thought about before. But when you inhale Cypress essential oil, it's very good for being able to establish, well, what's okay with me and what's not. So death can be many things, can't it? You know, it can be an absolute thing that something dies, which of course is very rare that evergreens do. Interesting that the evergreen will just remain like this all through the year, but a deciduous tree appears to die. It's this idea that it is sempervirens, that it is always living. But death might not always be about a person having life extinct. So, for example, somebody might have betrayed you in some way, or done something that is just like, no, you just completely ruined my idea of what your values were. Or maybe you are in a job where you've got somebody who just keeps doing things that is like riles you. And this is very good at being able to kind of go, just sit with this and see what is true for you. Can you live with this? Is there a way that you can actually express what the violation is and where the boundary is, and can you communicate that? Because that can be a really helpful part of dealing with relationships, can't it? The other aspect of the dream, which I thought was really quite interesting, was this idea of microaggressions. We talk about it in things like intersectionality and racism and sexism and things like that. But I always think that you can have like microaggressions upon your psyche. So, for example, and you maybe even not even notice that they're there until they're not. So, for example, we have all this like clutter of negative energy that exists around us all of the time. So I'm going to name 3 things that are microaggressions to my psyche, that I know that as soon as I deal with them, it's like I can feel the energy just going, thank you for that. So the first is that if I go into the kitchen in the morning and somebody hasn't put the washing up away, it's like, it started my day really badly straight away. Likewise, if I clean my skirting boards, I don't know if you call them skirting boards in America, but the things that go down the bottom of the wall that join to the ground, if you clean those, you suddenly feel like, oh gosh, the living room is so much cleaner, and you can just feel it. And likewise, my sock drawer at the moment, I really have to do something about my sock drawer. You see me, I'm like, thinking about it. If I dealt with it, then that would be gone. So this idea that there's this accumulation of microaggressions on my psyche that are just going, that is something else. I'll give it a 4th thing. I haven't done a piece of work that I've got a meeting for tonight. It's in the back of my head all of the time. So this accumulation of negative energy all of the time. So first of all, I could stop being so lazy and do all of those things. But also I could just like lie in a bath. It's always my medicine, lie in a bath. Or just inhale the cypress and just say, please, just take that away. I just don't want to be dealing with that all the time. And just that cleansing of that, making that space is, making the purity. I thought about Zoroastrians' temples, these fire temples. And they really reminded me of the Roman temples of Vesta. But also, in ancient Greece, the father of medicine, god of medicine, is Aesclepius. And people would dream with Aesclepius and his priestesses of Hygeia at the special sanctuaries. And cypress trees were always planted around the side of the sanctuary. And you really kind of, I was thinking about, well, does that mean what they were doing is they were dreaming because these negative energies that could be contributing to the diseases that they were asking about were in the field, you know, that the field became more purified and more rarefied, so that the dream that told the secret of what needed to be done to be able to get a prescription could come through. I think if you want to do any kind of, I think definitely mediumship work, although that's not my bag, but I also say nature spirit work, or any kind of psychic work where you're like, my brain is just too busy. This is such a good medicine to use. And likewise, if you keep going to a space where you know somebody's microaggressing, you know, the boss that keeps nitpicking, the co-worker who's behind your back, and you can feel that accumulation in your aura, in your actual energetic fields, then this is a really, really good way to do that. So inhalation particularly, also in going in the bath, you can make little sprays. One of these days I will get around to showing you how to make a spray. But also you can, it is quite astringent, so you wouldn't want very much of it. But just a small amount on your hands. Of course you're supposed to dilute it, but this one is right, it's a safe enough one to just do this one drop. And just kind of smooth over the etheric bodies. Kind of, I would always say, right, imagine a candlelight, imagine the golden like of candlelight, and just fill in the spaces, smoothing it down. And between the etheric bodies and the physical body, there's like an electromagnetic field, which I can just about see if I tune in, but it's like black. And if you imagine, I don't know if you did the experiment when you were kids and you had the iron filings on a piece of paper and you took your magnet underneath and they went all up and spiky like that. So when you have if you feel very fractious, or you've been afraid, or you have a lot of tension, then what happens is this, you can see that this electromagnetic field becomes spiky. And you can feel that in your physical body. You know, I just don't know what's the matter with me, but I just feel so tetchy. You can see that. And so this is really good to kind of just go, right, smooth it really close to the body. So you're not really in the aura itself. You're just kind of smoothing the electromagnetic field down. So you're doing it as much with visualization, because you're doing it with your thoughts about the candlelight color, but also you have got the actual spirit of the plant and the chemical volatiles just to really bring that down. And I'm doing it above my head because that's what you can see, but you can do it right over your body. It's really quite soothing to do that, just sort of a centimetre or so away from the physical body, to just tune in that and smooth that down. So that would be my teachings about the ancient wisdom of the trees for Cypress. That it is, well, ChatGPT word is threshold. It's ruining that word for me because I feel like I can't use it now, but it is a threshold plant. That, remember that if I had to cut this here, I don't want to do that because I don't want to kill it, but there's as much dead wood here as there is live wood, so that things can progress through the death of something. So if you know, if you really have had a terrible falling out with somebody and you think, but I want to be able to like manage this situation, this relationship, I don't want to lose it, but I certainly don't want to be in this position again, I need to be able to assert my own boundaries. That's great. Do you know what your boundaries are? Cypress will really help you to be able to deal with that. So there we go, ancient wisdom from the cypress tree.